I'm Chris Lee of Southeastern 14, reminding you that our content is brought to you by our friends at BetOnline. It is playoff time. The usual suspects are heading to Vegas for the championship. Our partner BetOnline is your number one source for football odds, stats, trends, and lines, with everything from point spreads to hundreds of bets on everything from the coin toss to the color of Gatorade. BetOnline is the number one source for your championship wagering. Head to BetOnline today. Get in on all the action. Bet online. The game starts here. Feels like a different year for Ole Miss. 12-team playoff now is going to put a lot of things on the table for a lot of schools. I felt like Ole Miss, if they'd been a 12-team playoff last year,
they would have made it.
Okay, I couldn't remember where they were in the rankings. Yeah. I knew they were close.
They would have been number 11. They would have gone. That would have been fun. They would have gone on the road in week one to play. I can't remember who it was.
Yeah. It feels like that's a good baseline of expectations for this coming year. Just kind of a playoff or bust scenario.
Here's the deal. There's no way around it. I've covered this beat now for a long time. And Ole Miss has always been able to kind of steer into the nobody respects us. We're not getting credit. We're being overlooked. Us against the world. It's a motivating thing. It's not a criticism. They can't do that this year. I mean, they can do it. It's going to get laughed at. Like, I'll make fun of them if they do it. And I won't be alone. Like, if Lane Kiffin goes, no one believes in us, I'll say, Lane. I mean, ESPN put out a way too early playoff prediction. And they got their 6 football writers to forecast the 12-team playoff. All 6 listed Ole Miss. Okay, that's respect. Someone put them at number 5 nationally yesterday. On Wednesday as we tape this. That's respect. I don't know that you can say, well, hey, no one believes in us. No, everyone believes in you. Literally everyone thinks you're a playoff team. So they're going to have to come up with a different kind of motivation. And then look, there's only 2 results for this team next year. You either make the playoffs in some capacity, whether it's as the 11 seed or as the 4 seed or the 5 or the 1 or whatever, and you end your season in some way in a playoff game, whether it's winning the championship or losing. I mean, look, 11 playoff teams are going to lose their final game. So there's going to be, we're not going to be able to judge failure on they lost their last game. No, I mean, 12 teams will make the playoffs. One's going to win the whole thing. You know, my son's soccer team was one of 16 teams in the state of Mississippi to make the playoff. And he made it to the Final Four and they lost. And, you know, he was devastated and he's like, we failed. I'm like, no, you didn't. You just ran out. Your turn ran out. It'll be like that. So they're either going to make the playoffs and it's a success, or they're not going to make the playoffs and it's going to be a failure. There's no in between. Like a year ago, if I'd told 100 Ole Miss fans, you're going to go 9-3 and you're going to play in the Citrus Bowl. Of the 190 would have been thrilled. If I go to those same 100 fans and go 9-3 Citrus Bowl, 100 will say failure. How about that? Yeah. That's where we're going. That's where we're going. And it's that way at Alabama, at Georgia, at Texas, at Missouri this year, maybe Tennessee. I think people are sleeping on Tennessee. You've got multiple programs in the SEC where it's playoffs or bust. And what is bust going to feel like when you tell, let's play this out. We're talking about Ole Miss. Let's play it out. Let's say Ole Miss goes 8-4, 9-3. Pick your record. I don't care. Either one. 7-5, 8-3, 8-4, 9-3. One of those 3 records. And it's failure. And they're like, hey, by the way, we need you to go to Jacksonville or Tampa or whatever to play this bowl game. 30 guys opt out? What does that look like? What does that even look like? When the coach says we don't want to go. It's going to be like a team that was on the NCAA bubble getting invited to the NIT and the kids looking around and going, we don't want to play in this. Yeah. You know, let's not. North Carolina saying no to the NIT. I'm fascinated to see. I mean, I hope for Ole Miss fans' sake that that's not the case, but I mean that is the story, and it's not limited to Ole Miss. They don't even mention LSU. They might even be in that boat where they're like, hey, if we don't make the playoffs, what are we doing? You know, and I just It's going to be make the playoffs. Everything is going to be about playoffs. And if you're at a program that's not a playoff contender, how do you keep your fans engaged? How do you keep people excited about something where there is it's not what it used to look like, and you're not part of the conversation? Is College Game Day with Nick Saban and all of them, are they even talking about anything outside of the playoff race?
Yeah.
And so, my daughter goes to Arkansas, right? So let's say, Arkansas is as bad as I think they're probably going to be next season. How do you hype up a game in November for a 3-5 team getting ready to play? I don't know. I don't know their schedule. Kentucky. Yeah. I don't know. How do you get people excited? Does anyone come? What does that look like? I think it's about to get really, really interesting in so many different ways. And I'm all for the 12-team playoff. I think it's awesome. I think it's going to be cool. I think it's going to be great for the sport. But don't kid yourself in thinking that it's going to be perfect. It's going to lead to some conversations because, in the past, a 7-3 team going down the stretch, they were still playing for a bowl game, right? Or a certain thing. Those are out now. It's like, okay, well, that team's not making the playoffs.
Well, look, I'm going to sound like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, but I'll tie it together and tell you kind of how I'm not. On one hand, like I look around, I see what happened today with coaches leaving and say that shouldn't be happening in a healthy game. I don't think that, a guy leaving one school, doing spring practice at another and ended up somewhere else in the fall. Ultimately, I don't think that's good in a lot of ways for the kids. It's certainly not good for the coaches who have no time off. So you got this whole set of things over here that most of us don't like. And because the NCAA is the NCAA and it lives in its own world, we haven't seen those things fixed. At the same time, 3-4 years ago, we lived in a world where we get to November, or maybe not even November. We'd be at the end of September or October. And it's like, would you take Alabama or the field?
Yeah.
Now we get a playoff where I picked all 3 playoff games. I missed them all.
Yeah.
I think it's great because I think we're finally in a time where like an Ole Miss has got a chance. And that wasn't the case a few years ago.
Oh, and those first round games on campus are going to be awesome. December the 21st.
Goodness,
I think that's going to be an awesome day.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's one on the 20th and then 3 on the 21st or something like, well, who cares? Whatever. Those are going to be great. I mean, who's not going to watch, Ole Miss at Ohio State or I don't know, like something crazy where Missouri gets a home game against Michigan.
Yeah.
Can you imagine Columbia, Missouri for a playoff game with Michigan in town? Can you imagine what this place would be like if 6th seeded Ole Miss played host to Notre Dame in a playoff game in Oxford? Yeah. Dude, this place would be a zoo. Yeah. It would be crazy. It would make the Katy Perry, Alabama day in 2014 look like the Furman game.
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be bonkers. But on the flip side, right? 9-3, Ole Miss goes to the Citrus Bowl. I'm not sure they'd take 300 fans. I mean, the landscape's going to change. And so people say, what do you think? I'm like, I don't know. There's no way to predict really what it's going to look like in 2 or 3 years because there was no way that you woke up on March the 1st, 2020 and thought we'd be here on less than 4 years later. There's no way you thought that. And here we are.
Well, love your work. You of course cover Ole Miss like nobody else does down there. You've got a podcast. In fact, we've had your co-host on here before, Tyler Siskey. You guys do an incredible job of talking about football in a way that nobody else does, with the connections you have between the two of you. I just want to give you a minute on the way out to promote all that you do.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thanks for the kind words. MPW Digital is the place to find us wherever you get podcasts, YouTube. We have a morning podcast that's pretty Ole Miss centric called the Oxford Exxon podcast. That's more than 10 years old now, a daily podcast. And then McCready and Siskey, powered by Rain Total Body Fuel. Get your Rain, 300 milligrams of natural caffeine, Chris. Get your Rain on and listen to us for a Mondays and Thursdays live stream at 2 p.m. Central, but it's available wherever you listen to podcasts.
You can clip this for your sponsor. I've started buying Rain based on listening to your podcast, and I have bought probably a couple dozen cases. But it is good stuff. So I'm helping those who are helping
walls and stuff, right? You've been just
pretty much.
Yeah, it works.
It does the job.
If you need to pick me up, Rain will do it for sure.
Yeah, Neal, it's always fun when you join us. Thank you so much.
All right, Chris, appreciate you, buddy.
All right, I'm Chris Lee. This is Southeastern 14 presented by Bet Online.